So, hello everyone, and welcome to this presentation for this first Paris Houdini Hug. My name is Fabien Novak. I'm the head of FX and FX supervisor at the Yard VFX, and we are going to talk today about the effects of The Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power Season 2. So let me introduce myself briefly. I used to work for the last decade in London in some of the biggest VFX studios, such as, rest in peace, MPC and ILM, on some big blockbuster, as you might notice. So a quick word about the Yard. We are an independent VFX studio based in Paris and Montpellier, and recently in London as well. Founded by Lorenz Herman in 2014, we are delivering high-quality visual effects services for feature films and episodics, and global cinema and streaming. Currently, we are around 80 employees. Here are some of the recent shows we did at the Yard. And so I try to pick up mostly international films, but there is a French one that managed to sneak in the selection, just because the cover is pretty much 90% of FX simulation. So I'm talking about Bâtiment 5. But today we are going to talk about the Rings of Power Season 2. So first, let's watch an FX breakdown video, so we all know what we are going to talk about. So it goes without saying that we started this year in a pretty good mood because we won 2 awards for Best VFX in a Series and Best FX Simulation. So now I've got a new toy on my desk and I'm happy with that. So today we will dive in art-directed destruction, a bit of various type of effects, a bit of everything, and we will end up with water simulation. That's going to be the menu for today. Here are a few numbers just to illustrate what we've been through. So it's been 18 months of production, 19 full CG environments, 35 assets, 580 sub-assets, about 80-person team in total. We were 7 in the FX department. We did 480 dailies. The longest shot we delivered was 2,224 frames. We sent 1,736 versions to client, and in total we did 19,000 and something internal version. More numbers, but this time with some colored graphics. You will notice that the total amount of the FX data that we delivered on the show was somewhere around 115 terabytes, which is actually quite reasonable for this type of show of that scale and that complexity. But yet it is still a lot of data to store. So let's talk about destruction now. We had to create our fair share of destruction for this show. A bunch of small ones, a couple of large-scale simulation as well. So let me send that video in. Sorry, just there you go. Hop. So this shot was the solar vents collapsing following an earthquake that shook all the mountains and the caves underneath. We needed to feel that the vents started to collapse outside in, like big chunks of the roof falling and occluding the light that was bouncing off the mirrors. And the whole corridor collapsing was compressing the air trapped inside, creating like a massive amount of pressure, which needed to escape and to burst out, basically. So this created this sort of dust explosions and shockwave of dust, spitting out tons of debris of all size. The 4 big structural pillars underneath the vent had to break as well in order to show that the weight and the downward pressure created by the collapse of the vent will affect the entire mountain internal structure. We had to make it feel like, whoa, this is a super serious event, it's very dangerous. We are in danger. So obviously the entire simulation was heavily art directed since each event had to happen at a specific frames. And in some very constrained time range. I mean, I'm going to go a bit more in detail on that, but pretty much every single element went through a few iterations to fulfill the creative visions. So we got, feedbacks such as, hey, at that specific frame, we need to see the shadows of the big falling rock at the back of the vent. So even if we don't actually see the destruction itself, it's already happening in the back of the vent and the light going through, getting occluded by the big chunks of rocks falling. At this frame, we want to get the explosion. Oh, can we see the explosion happening 20 frames earlier? Oh, I think the pillar on the left should hold until that frame. Or, oh, that would be cool to see the pillar in the middle right break in 3 or 4 parts instead. Oh, could you please remove 30% of the falling debris? Or, oh, please make the medium-sized debris 15% smaller, and so on. And we had a cool one like, could you make the dust leak the inside wall slowly and at the beginning, and suddenly it burst at a specific frame. So that's when the dust start to get out, there is like a bit of dust that is like leaking the wall and going outside. And for that, there is like hand-drawn curves, spline, to drive each leaking dust direction. And of course, suddenly the camera changes and the shot length changes as well. So you have to readapt everything and to make it all over again, to make it work with the new camera and the new timing. So yeah, well, that's basically our job, right? So when you work on shot like that, you must build your entire setup in a way that you can easily control and change each single element, each layer, each event. You need to be able to control them totally, because you're gonna need to be able to address those type of knots on a daily basis. And trust me, if you build your setup from day one with that in mind, it will make your life a whole lot easier. Oh, let me start those videos as well. And it's too bad they don't start in loop by default. Or can I? So we had to make a bunch of small destructions as well, dozens of shots like this. But even for those ones, we had to be able to control everything. You can assume that we went through quite a few iterations as well. For example, on the left side, a rock falling in the market, tearing apart some fabrics and making dust when it hit the ground. So the clothes had to tear, but not too much. We had to keep some bits still attached to the ceiling, or it needs to be a bit more elastic or less, or tear apart in a certain way. So already plenty of iteration just for that. The dust has to dissipate fast enough so it doesn't cover the plate and we can see the performance of the actors just behind, but doesn't dissipate too fast so it still looks natural. And for each shot, with the dwarf mining the rocks with their pickaxe, we did a very flexible setup that allowed us to make this destruction and easily address the usual type of creative knots. Oh, please, less debris, or very few big debris and most of them very small. Oh, could you please remove that particular debris just right there? Or, oh, can you avoid to shoot debris toward the king's face, please? So, yeah, for some shot, we did not even have the pickaxe geometry, actually. To use, but we still wanted to feel the movement of the pickaxe through the dust, adjecting the volume simulation basically. So we had to cheat in some ways, and it ended up with we hand animating some simple shapes like sphere and so on within the volume simulation to get those swirling motion that we all love to see. So that shot, this shot was a key moment in the storytelling. So after forcing his way through, the king discovers something precious behind the wall of his cave, and that's really a big part of the story. Although it doesn't necessarily look like it when you see it final like this, but this shot was, let's say, it was a bumpy ride for us in FX. We cheated pretty much everything. Like, we had to avoid at any cost to get any piece or any debris, any piece of rocks or anything going into the king's face. But obviously, if you let the physics just do its things, well, everything just want to go straight right into his face. So we split the shot, so the left side and the right side were simulated completely separately. The gravity direction was completely customized. Bending along the way in order to make the debris falling down, then toward the left to avoid the face of the king, but in a subtle way, so it doesn't look like there is like a magical force field repelling stuff away from the king. The bouncing, the friction, or even debris going to rest at some specific frames or in some specific areas. The different layers of dust, the way it dissipates or doesn't accumulate in front of the actor's face. We did a lot of post-simulation tweaks as well to stop some pieces at some specific frame or to remove some other, and so on. I think in the very end, there is not... I'm not saying any lie there. I think there is not a single piece of rock or pebble or debris that was not at some point modified by hand. 53 versions before the shot received the final approval. So yeah, but it doesn't look like it. We had this big shot. At some point, we had this big shot where there is like a colossal tower that start to collapse, and there is like an enormous rock fall from very high and crashes into the bridge. And we knew, even from the previews or from just reading the brief of the shot, we knew it could be an awesome shot. A lot of dwarfs walking on the bridge, minding their business, a super dynamic camera and dramatic camera, and some sudden violent destruction happening. Everything to make an FX guy happy. So yeah, we got very excited straight away. And the first version we did, which is this one there, we started to, we did it before to even receive the bridge geometry final or the camera was approved or anything like that. We just wanted to jump in straight away and make something. And because we are all big fans of the original Lord of the Ring movie, we wanted to make some sort of tributes to the original film. So Kazakh Dome, a bridge, collapsing, say no more. We got a cool reference in mind. So that was it. So yeah, we tried to make our clin d'œil, I would say, like a tribute to that sequence. Well, it was fun. It was very just the first version, and we quickly moved away to make the shot proper. So, going back there, up, there you go. So this is the properly art-directed shot, the actual shot. So the falling rock was keyframed, animated until a certain frame, then switched to a RBD simulation that takes over. That way we could control exactly the speed, the timing of the impact, accordingly to the camera movement and the overall timing of the shot, which again changed quite a few times. The fracture of the bridge was totally customized, so we could get some fracture shapes exactly as we wanted, like small debris around the impact and long cracks running along the deck of the bridge. Respecting the architectural structure of that building. The network of constraints holding back all the fractured pieces together was carefully animated to release the chunks precisely where and when we wanted them to collapse. We made various iteration. So the big rocks was first cracking in half, like in two big chunks, and then in more chunks. We did some version where the rock was being almost stopped when it was hitting the bridge before to continue to fall when the bridge was collapsing. We did some version where the rock was going through the deck like butter, pretty much, making the deck almost explode. And then eventually we end up with something more like in the middle. Custom drag for the chunks that were flying mid-air, so we could control their curve trajectory. Additional layers of pieces. That's the layer in yellow right there on the left. Just to enhance the impact and send some flying debris toward the people running on the deck and make it look even more dangerous. Same with the dust, looking to get the right dissipation so we could see through to perceive most of the action, but not dissipate too fast so it still look natural. There was also, dozens of brazier placed along the bridge, filled with charcoal on fire, and they had to be blown away by the impact, sending embers, sparks, smoke, and flames everywhere before to vanish into the darkness. And then obviously a bunch of dwarfs running for their lives. Some being crushed instantly by the rock, some being thrown in the air. So it's crowd simulation switching to ragdoll. And then some who hopefully managed to escape. Lucky guys. All of these little guys, because they were not running naked, we had also to add a layer of vellum simulation on top for their clothes, but also for their hair and the beard. And less visible, but it's still there, I promise. There is plenty of mid-sized pieces of rock, debris, and dust falling a bit everywhere all around the shot, even along the walls of the giant tower that is falling. So yeah, all in all, quite a lot of layer of effects there, and each of them heavily art-directed to make a whole that is coherent. And I have to say, I am pretty pleased with how the final shot turned out in the end. All right, let's move on to various types of effects. So beside the destruction shots, we had to give life to all the environments for all the sequences that we were working on. And therefore, we had to create a large panel of all type of effects. So I'm gonna loop this one as well, if it wants, all right. So I'm not going to go too much in details on that chapter. It's really gonna be more like an overview. But roughly, we had to make a bunch of vellum simulations, either for vegetation, cloth, air, beard, crowd simulations. We had to make some procedural modeling, like we see a bit before, for the orbs with some amethyst-like shapes inside. We did plenty of fire simulation, as you've seen for torches or brazier, even some of them being blown by this sonic wave made by the dwarfs there when they are singing. We created some custom crowd system to have people able to carry wheelbarrows and able to follow tortuous trajectories. That shot at the end with hundreds of brazier getting blown out. We did also a lot of atmospheric, smoke, mist, dust, and so on. A lot of different type of effects. Smaller one, but a big quantity. And so, just to give you an idea, we had to create dozens of variations for the crowd. Dwarfs carrying wheelbarrows on narrow paths, avoiding each other. Some dwarfs digging and mining with their pickaxe inside a tunnel. Some walking up the stair, some walking down the stair, some standing and chatting together, some waiting, then start walking forward, and then they stop because the people in front of them have stopped as well. A lot of variations. A lot of variation for the size as well. Tall, small, fat, shapes, etc. Look as well. And then in the very end, once all the crowd simulations are done, we have this box net there on the bottom right, which is basically we gather all the crowd simulation and we run for each of them vellum simulation for the clothes, the hair, the beards, and so on. And we had a lot of notes. Or I would like this group of dwarfs to be a bit more there, or this one, can you remove this one, or can you add more dwarfs on the balcony there? So we have a bunch of dwarfs at the window on the top right, just above the king's throne room. They are on the balcony, they are looking at all the peoples on the bridge, but I dare you to see a single one. But I promise they are there, and we got a lot of notes on most of them. A lot of work, and everything crafted by hand with care and love. All right, and now let's talk about probably my favorite topics: water simulation. Water, like would say the Brits. So, to give life to our large environment, we had to create some waterfalls, some rivers, and even some magical cymatics. Obviously, when we start any type of effects, it's always good to look for real-life references, so you know where you are going, and you know what type of features or stuff you want to replicate, or you definitely want to see in your simulation, or also stuff that you don't want to see. But also, we had to respect what was done in the first season. We had to build optimized setup to be able to do faster iteration. And also, to keep your IT happy, you need to reduce the memory footprint as much as possible. So it's always good to think optimizing straight away, rather than when it's too late. When it's too late, it's too late. We had to work for custom airfields as well, and we did some custom whitewater solver, and then we did some cymatics, gentles and bad. So, in the cave of Kazakh Dome, we had dozens of waterfalls of all sizes scattered a bit everywhere in the environment. We knew from the previews that most of them would be seen with a camera angle slightly from below. So that's easier because you can easily hide the emission source. But for some of them, we had to see the river from where the waterfall starts from. So we had to build our setup accordingly to that constraint as well. So splitting the river simulation from the waterfall, to me, was the correct approach in that case. So on the left, this is my little drawing that I did at the beginning, just to explain my plane of attack. And on the right, this is pretty much the setup, how it turns out in the end. So watching at some real-life references is great, of course. But in our case, we also had another constraint, and not a small one. The look of the waterfall was already established in season 1, and by some legendary FX artists from the other side of the planet. So we had to stick to it. Not really much choice here, and no pressure at all. So we choose some key shots from the first season. And I spent the first couple of days or weeks, of R&D, trying to get as close as possible to these reference shots. So working on the scale, the level of detail, matching the speed as well, trying to get some crispy details in the water flow, such as when some streams of water are splitting apart from the main body of the waterfall. And they are trickling against the rocks on the left side of the cliff. So let me show you with the mouse. I'm talking about this little bit here that I really liked, because it was really matching what they did in the first season. So yeah, bit of R&D to get it right. And I did the same for some smaller waterfalls, which are those double waterfall pouring out of this sort of exhausts. So yeah, matching the speed, the sense of weight, the crispy shapes in the water flow. And at the same time, in parallel, I started working on the airfield system to get the water to behave correctly. Because when water is free falling from a fairly large height, it encounters the density of the air and it gets heavily affected by it. So large chunks of water are atomized and turn into smaller bits of water, which themselves turn into smaller particles, and it goes on and on until the particles of water eventually turns into mist, which is micro particles, so thin and in such a large quantity that it looks like smoke. So in FX, we would treat that as a smoke simulation, but in the reality, it's not smoke, it's mist, it's still water. Well, as you might know, if you know a bit Houdini, there is no such thing as air or airfield inside the default flip solver. So you have to make it yourself. So I tried, or we tried, because I worked on that with someone else as well. We tried pretty much all known approach, from single to much more complex techniques. So even generating actual density field around the flip particles to advect them, that gives great result, sure, but it's hard to control and it's incredibly time consuming. Eventually, I went for my favorite method, the one I used for years now, which is really a cheat, to be honest. It's a simple fake airfield, which actually is not even an airfield, but it looks like it. So basically, I'm just gently multiplying down the velocity of each particles based on their distance from the surface. So when that is set correctly, it gives exactly what we are looking for. Those sort of V shapes of massive chunks of water getting atomized and smaller particles trailing behind. And it worked pretty well. And that for a fraction of the price compared to an actual heavy airfield approach. And fraction of the price in terms of time, of data space as well, but mostly in terms of time. That means we could get that result much faster than if we had to use like a heavy airfield approach. And time, as you might know, is very precious in production, especially on big shows like that. So once this was done, I start working on the additional layer, spray and mist for the waterfalls and foam for the river. So I went quite straightforward, simple pop particles emitted from the main flip, using a certain range of the speed and the vorticity as a mask, and then I advect these particles with a volume simulation made with the awesome Axiom solver, which is also emitted from that same mask, basically. And the volume simulation, we could also remap it and use it directly for the render as the mist layer. So 2 birds, 1 stone. Cool. And the foam was a custom solver. It's really a simple pop solver, pop net with some advection coming from the flip simulation beneath. Well, this setup is finally ready and functional, and so we could apply that into a proper shot. So here is a shot that is 360 frames long with 2 waterfalls, a mid pool, and a long river at the top. So everything I just talked about. And obviously plenty of dwarfs minding their business and plenty of other smaller effects such as the torches, atmospherics, and so on. So on the top of the setup that you can see on the right, like all the gray box nets, it's where we are preparing all the sources. So emitters on the left side, all the colliders. So you gather all the environment, you split them into smaller piece of geometry to optimize everything and not have to load the entire cave of Kazakh Doom just for your river or your waterfall, but just the bit that is interesting for your simulation. And then you convert that to make it FX tight, or I would say waterproof, basically. So usually it's like turn into VDBs and back to polygon to be sure you have something without any holes or enough thickness so it could collide correctly against that. And then the 2 box net, the gray on the top right, they are like where I did my custom velocity field. So I like to literally draw some curves to actually draw the river flow of the river, so I can get swirlings behind the rocks or area where it's accelerating, and I can really draw like a painter, if you will, the flow of the river and make it look exactly as I want. And then we run the flip simulation, which is the part there. So that's the first flip simulation. The flip solver is somewhere there. And it's like completely custom flip solver. Inside, I did all the airfield system and a bunch of other stuff to be able to control the flip simulation as much as possible. And once this simulation is done, obviously we meshed it and everything, but also that gives us the emitter for the waterfall. So first we sim the top river, then the top waterfall, because the emitter here is just taking the output of the river. And then we make the top waterfall simulation, and once this is done, we can make the bottom waterfall simulation that look at the end of the first waterfall, and so on. And then at the same time, in parallel, we can run their spray and mist simulation, and then rasterize everything into VDB for the export and for the render. And for each layer, you can really control everything. One of the biggest advantages of working this way is that when you get some artistic or creative notes from the supervisor or from the director, and you will have some, on a specific part of the sim, such as, can you make the bottom of the waterfall less splashy around the bridge so it doesn't drench in water all the dwarfs that are walking on the bridge, or this type of notes. Then you can address these notes without having to resim the other simulation. You don't have to resim the river if you get some notes on the bottom waterfall. You can just focus on the bottom waterfall. So this is pretty efficient. And now let's look at how a shot is made from A to Z. So we start with a layout where, sorry, just gonna go back quickly on the layouts, but That's where the camera is defined and the rough environment is put in place. Then we can drop our setup there, a few minor adjustments to make it work in that specific context, and then we can run first sim, see how it looks. Then, while we are doing some iteration, we are iterating on the water simulation. At the same time, the environment is refined as well. Everything is moving onward basically in all departments. And so every time the environment has a massive change, you also have to readapt your all. For example, the collider you baked and everything, you have to recache them to stay up to date. You refine the dynamic, the look, and everything, and at some point you get something that you are happy with. So you bring back all your real life references. So here is like a Icelandic waterfall and some Brazilian waterfall. So you could look at the mist on when the waterfall hits the bottom, how fast the mist gets ejected, how far it goes away from the waterfall before to slow down to create those big swirl. And so you try to nail that in your simulation to get the same feeling, the same speed, the same sense of scales and everything. Look at these other references to be sure you get also the same sort of shapes in the water flow, big chunks of water, the V shape that we like to see, and etc., etc. And once you are happy with everything, you render everything, you split everything into passes. You even add some extra passes, such as, I did like an extra spray layer here, but mostly like an extra foreground mist as well, to put in between the camera and the bridge, so it gives a bit more depth to the shot. And then you give everything, you make like a slab comp, FX slab comp of all the effects all together. There is also, all the effects for the little brazier, all the torches and everything, even some background waterfall that we don't necessarily see much, but they are there and we did plenty of them. And then you give that to the compositing department. And then the comper does his magic trick and makes the shot looks awesome. And then, you can just apply that, and make some other shots as well. So this is in a nutshell how you make a shot basically. And now you got the recipe, so you can just rinse and repeat for the other shot of the sequence. And and that's it. And that's how it looks in the end. So, cymatics. So we had to create some cymatics. That was an interesting journey as well. So cymatics are the patterns that emerge from when some particles or liquids are being displaced by the vibration of a surface. So different frequency or amplitude or phase in that vibration, and gives you different resulting patterns. So we have met also the cymatics already in the opening credits of the Rings of Power Season 1 and Season 2. So visually, it's something that we were already a bit familiar with. So on the left side, that was our main reference, which is a very cool clip, by the way. Everyone loves his own type of music, but the clip itself is really cool. It's all practical. The guys did all the music for the clip and generate different type of cymatics on different type of materials. Pretty cool. And so, in Season 2, we had to make good cymatics. So we have our dwarf who generates some magical vibration when she's singing. And we wanted to illustrate that. So when she's looking for the orbs that she lost, she's using her voice as a sort of sonar to try to localize the position of the orbs. And we wanted to see some cymatics pattern appearing on the surface of the lake and like searching, trying to localize the orbs. So we call those one the gentle or the good cymatics. And we started our initial R&D by applying the exact same mathematical formula that was used to do the grain and the RBD setups, for the opening credits, and then use that to to generate some ripples simulation, to drive some ripple simulation actually on a water surface. And we tried to see how we could control that, how we could make the pattern changing over time depending of the pitch of the voice, making it move through the surface or in a certain direction, like a controlled spreading effect, which is what I did here, like a sort of spreading effect. So, and that was the pattern beneath that was driving the ripple simulation. Then we tried something else. We explore other approach. So let me just try to get that done. All right. So yeah, we created this this sort of self-thinking solver that could throw some rays, the red rays, all around in all direction. And if it encounters an obstacle like the edge of the lake or a rock or whatever, it would go around. And for each of these directional rays, it would spawn some ripples, basically, like this. So that was like a smart approach, I would say, but probably a bit overkill, because in the end, we ended up with some simple, with a handful of simple ripple subsolver just stacked together on top of each other, carefully keyframe and animated so we could achieve exactly the look that was desired. And in the final shot, everything eventually became very subtle, and with the very dark lighting condition, in the very end, we can barely see anything. So it was, it was a lot of work, a lot of effort for not much result in the very end, but it was an interesting journey because we learned quite a bit along the way, and when you learn stuff, it's never really time wasted. Can I go to the next one? There you go. And so, well, the high pitch of the voice when she's singing eventually awakes something deep down in the darkness of Khazad-dûm, shadows and flame, the Balrog of Morgoth. And the Balrog answers to that singing with some long roar, which makes the water vibrating, but totally differently. At that point, we did not know in the story that was the Balrog yet, but we had to identify visually, without any doubt, that is something very dangerous, scary, or bad. So yeah, one of the main references that we used was this awesome crocodile water spiky turbulences. So at first I tried to basically to emulate the same behavior in simple water tank, to see how I could animate and control the frequency, the amplitude, to make various intensity in the effect, and see if I could make that move across a water tank and not just being at the same place. So that was really my first couple of tests, and trying to make it move across the lake. So I used a custom velocity field to drive most of the fluid motion actually, and then to control. Most of the job was actually to make that effect spread and cross the lake, obviously with some very specific time constraint, because it needed to start from the back of the lake at a specific frame, and it had to hit the other side of the lake where the draft is at a specific frame to match the performance of the actress. So to achieve that, basically it's already in loop. So to achieve that, I used some curve that I keyframed to make them move across the lake, so I could really control which frame they were at which position. And then I used that to spawn a particle simulation, which I used as a mask to drive the velocity field. And then that velocity field would advect a water flip simulation. So a few layers, but at least that way I could have a proper full control on every aspect and really be able to stick to the timing nuts. And there was 3 different roar from the Balrog rising up in intensity. So there is like a first wave, and then a second one slightly bigger, and the last one was so violent that, well, she's super scared, she panics, she screams, she drops the orbs on the ground, the orbs breaks and shatters into many pieces, and there you go, another art-directed destruction shot. And yeah, for this last shot, I think I forgot the number exactly, but it was fairly high resolution flip simulation. I did some wet map for the environment as well, and some custom attributes and masks based on the speed, the vorticity, and also the Y8, in order to drive some parameters of the shading, such as the roughness, the specular, the index of refraction, and so on. And also those masks could be used by the compositing at the very end to really get exactly the look that they wanted, because I think in the end we went like, we want the water to be less crystal clear and more milky, and this kind of knot. So it was easy to, with that kind of mask, to address those knots directly in comp and not having to go back to the render or to the simulation even. And voila. So I am going to stop here because I think I'm in time, right?
Kinda.
Almost. So yeah, as you see, to be continued. So there will more to be said, especially on the reel at the beginning. You see this big shot on the outside where everything turned into ice, and I will explore more of our work at the Houdini Hive that will occur at the 2025 FMX in a couple of months. So please stay tuned. I would like just to take a minute to say thank you to some special people. So my FX crew, obviously. So Adrien, who is sitting there, who pretty much single-handedly made all the destruction setup and all the big destruction shots. Bertrand, Nicolas, Sébastien, Kevin, who is sitting there as well, and Louise. Kudos to the supervision team, so Laurence, Emeric, Louis, and Julien. Thank you for your guidance and your wisdom. And big up for the prod team, so Virginie, Audrey, Gladys, and Marja. Thank you for your support and your patience, because it's not always easy with the FX team of hooligans you have to stay patient. So that's it. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed it. And if we have time for a few questions, maybe one or two.
Yeah, thanks so much, Fabian, for this amazing talk. There has been a great job, so yeah, congratulations. I think we have like just a few very minutes for like, I don't know, maybe one or two questions if you want. So please raise your hand if you have any, and I'm gonna reach you right now.
So my question is about the part you talked about the life of a shot, and it's about the references in general. So you said this is where the camera is defined. So my question is like, how is the camera defined? Do you deal with maybe the tracking results data, or do you do tracking by yourself? So how are those things are connected? Thanks.
Well, this is more a question for for the layout team, or for the not really my job to do that, but. We do a 3D camera tracking of the actual real camera that was made on set, obviously. So this is already a constraint because part of it was shoot on the green screen, but on top of that, you need to make the shot much larger, much bigger. So you keep that initial real motion from the real camera and you apply it to a 3D camera within a larger wall, so you can also give it even more motion. That was the case here. We make it like move slightly forward toward the bridge, come from a bit higher, and then in the end the plate is more used almost as a card in Nuke. So you can have some sort of freedom if you want with the 3D camera. I don't know if that answers exactly your question.
Hi, thank you very much for the presentation. My question is, for the more complex effects, do you first build a network that functions and then make it so that it can be modulable and be able to change it later? Or do you make it so you can change and iterate since the beginning?
Isn't it the same? I mean, I'm not sure exactly what you mean, but basically, yeah, when you build your initial setup, you go through all the steps from the first one to the very end. Then you refine each part, and then you have to reiterate every time you present your effects to the supervisor. You present the final product, sort of the final result. So you don't need to show your emission point or your if you scatter some point, you don't need to show that. You just need to show the final stuff. Even a render, it's even better than showing a flipbook. So in the end, you have to run through the step of your whole setup. But when you build it at first, I think I'm not sure that's exactly the sense of your question, but from you build it from the ground up, and at the very first stone that you put, you already need to think through all the different steps. Try to foresee all the technical issue you might encounter along the way. During the iteration you will do, because you're gonna receive some notes, you're gonna probably hit some tech issue, like, oh, maybe that stuff is going through the ground, doesn't collide correctly, or maybe, oh shit, I have like my volume is too, I don't know, maybe if you're using like a volume field, vel field, for example, velocity field, to advect some particles or whatnot. Maybe this is too heavy, or the domain is too small and I cannot do. You try to, I don't know, I don't have like a specific example to say, but you need to try to foresee, to really anticipate all the potential technical issue you're gonna have, and try to solve them straight away, so your journey gonna be easier. And then even if you think you anticipate everything, you will still have some issue anyway. So don't worry, you will have some, or something's gonna break, or the farm's not gonna go in your way the day you really need it, or so you really need to be prepared for pretty much everything every time. And yeah, that's really the idea. Is like try to make your setup directly that already. Take in account all the stuff you're gonna have to do, and I don't know. Maybe I went too far in my explication, and I'm a bit
exactly answers my question.
Okay.
Thanks.
I don't know if we're gonna just pick a last one, and we'll be able to have a talk right after in the cocktail. So yeah, let's pick a last one.
It's kind of related to the previous question, but I was wondering, all the manual stuff you do on top of simulations, is it something you do under, like directing velocity, as you said, or is it something you do on top of caching and stuff like that?
Oh, it's after caching.
It's on top of caching. Okay.
You get your simulation done, you get your cache, and then, I don't know, like you have a destruction shot, so all your simulation is cached already, you have plenty of debris, rocks falling, etc. And then you see that, oh shit, there is this debris there that is like jittering, so you can either go back to simulation and try to fix it and run another simulation, which might take hours if the simulation is super long. And maybe you're gonna fix that, but you're gonna get another one that starts to jiggle or to do something that you did not expect. Or you can keep the simulation that you have because everything is working fine apart this tiny bit. Just take it, remove it, or take it and switch it to something static after a certain frame, so it stops moving and it stops doing something crazy. In the case of you have like a debris going straight into the king's face. Well, just pick up this one. You get the idea of that particles or that debris. You can just select it, remove it, and you still have the entire sim already done. In the case of a flip simulation, you can do the same. I don't know. Let's say you have your waterfall, so it's like heavy simulation of flip. So there is like probably millions of particles. You don't want to resimulate that because maybe it took like 10 or 12 hours to simulate over the night. And then you realize that, shit, at this frame there is this splashes that is bouncing off the rocks and it's going too fast, or it makes this little ugly shape that catch the attention and you don't want to see that. So you can, just go in your viewport, press 9 on the pavnum, go into attribute, select ID, select by point, and then you put the lasso selection, and then you draw exactly the bit you want to remove, blast, hop, they have never been there, and you don't have to resim anything.
Thank you.
Great, thanks so much, Fabien, for this amazing talk. It has been very great. Et encore merci à toi, Fabien.
Merci beaucoup.